This one's for you, Dragon Gamer. By popular request, we are going to make a mask of Bendy from the survival horror game Bendy and the Ink Machine. I'm going to start out by finding the biggest ball in my house that I can find and prepping it by covering it in plastic wrap. Then, with the help of my little ones, mix together the cooked version of paper mache glue and some actual glue just to sturdy it up a little bit. Pretty standard process, but I'm taking extra care to keep the overall texture as smooth as possible. I'm using phone books here because the weight of the paper is a little bit lighter than newspaper and therefore easier to get smooth, but you can use whatever you'd like. The next day, after everything was dry, it was time for a second layer. Then I cut out a small area where your head will go, and also to expose the valve in the ball to let out the air in the end. And then we put on a third layer and a fourth. In the end, I think I put 5 layers on this one because I want it to be fairly stiff.
It's like you want. You're going to take the mixer to the ball, and our hands are going to be in the way.
That's okay. That's what I want.
Our hands are being in the way.
Yeah, I'm gonna film you.
He's going to do more hands. Doing
I'm actually filming all of you.
What? What's air? You suck it out.
Okay, so guys, I did some layout on picture. Just printed it out, sketched out some lines to figure out where everything was. Now the next step will be to cut this out of the sphere and make those ears, I guess they're called, or spikes or horns or whatever you want to call them, just this shape here. So it's about 1/4 of the way down and 1/4 of the way over. So we're just gonna slice that open, fold it down, and hopefully it works. I did some tests on like a little tape ball to see if that would work. So we're just gonna slice that open, smush it down, and put some more paper over it. So that's the next step, and then we'll start doing the layout and painting all of this. I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna do the eyes and make it functional so you'll be able to see through, probably something similar to the thing I did on the Panther mask, where it's like screen material there. But these are pretty wide set eyes, so you might still not be able to see through those, so we might have to make some screen out of the mouth too, so we'll see. So I laid out where I wanted the horns to go and cut that area into a bunch of little strips, hoping that I'd be able to shape them down into a concave shape. To hold them temporarily in place, I started taping them together, but it was quickly becoming apparent that this idea was not going to work. Okay, so that didn't work, so I just ended up cutting them off completely and looking at it visually from the side to say, okay, that's the proportion I want. It's like with the face and everything, that's how big the horn should be. So it's kind of ends up being a weird elliptical shape on there, but as you cut it, depending on how big your ball is, just kind of make sure that the proportions are equal to what your reference material is looking like. So we've got our hole now. Now we're just gonna fill it in with kind of some droopy strips of newspaper, and that'll make our kind of fill in that shape with more paper mache. And that should work a lot better than trying to tape all those tabs together. Now we need some way to suspend the mask around the user's head. And originally I was going to use a construction hard hat, but it ended up not being able to fit inside the mask. So instead I made this crude helmet out of strips of foam, and we're just going to shove that in there with some dowel rods. Okay, so we set the helmet down inside there and kind of got it positioned where we want it. and then just stuck it in there with a bunch of dowel rods so that it didn't move. And then I put the little foam pads down there just to distribute the stress so it didn't stab right through the paper mache all around there, and it's pretty solid. So on to the next step. Uh-oh, that one fell. Little guy, gotta fix him. Like I said before, I suspected the eyes were going to be too far apart to be functional, and with the initial test fitting, I found that to be the case. So instead, I'm cutting out the black spaces between the teeth. Then it was finally time to paint. Initially, I was feeling really good about the texture I was able to achieve with just the paper alone, but then after I put that first coat of paint on there, all the imperfections became much more obvious. I'm gonna go do some research and see what other people have done to kind of fix this issue. Okay, so that's much better. I didn't like the texture that was on it. I ended up wanting it a lot smoother, so I took a bucket of all-purpose wall mud, drywall mud, slide that all over it, smooth it out with my hand and some water, that water right there. And then after it was dry, after about 24 hours, I just took a orbital sander to the whole thing and smoothed it out, because paper is wood, so you can just sand it just like it was wood. So it's a lot smoother. We'll see how it turns out with the paint job, but I think that's gonna work out better for everybody. So we're gonna paint it, put the textures on. I really was debating whether to make the face three-dimensional, but I think I'm gonna just leave it flat and paint it on. So we're gonna paint this whole thing black, paint the face white, paint the eyes, get all the details done. So we'll check back in a little bit. Okay, so next thing we're just gonna spray paint all of this black outside. And I don't want to film it, so snap, ding! All done. Now let's do some dancing.
They send you a letter to come back home to play, but to your dismay, this isn't your day. For the happy fun time has begun to fade. Watch as we reanimate our corpses you abandoned, or dismantled, or mishandled, but we won't be skipped and swayed. Trapped within these walls, you left our souls to drip away. The ink decayed, the walls are day, but a reckoning has come today. You say Boris has no guts, cause you replace it with mechanical strain. We've been tortured, but we move forward. This disorder kills your day. I am alive, live off the light. You're the